I guess I'll start, and since this is for people who don't know us yet, this all started in 1958. I was a student at UCLA in a fraternity, and the phone rang one afternoon. I happened to answer it, and it was the business manager of a medical clinic in Santa Monica, and he was looking for sperm donors. And I was 19, and I immediately thought there's something weird about this, and this is maybe not something I ought to follow up on. But then he seemed reasonable, and he explained that the reason he'd called this particular house, which is Phi Gamma Delta, was he had been a Phi Gamma Delta fraternity member at the University of Arizona. So the doctors had asked him to find donors, and he made a good decision. He thought, well, I'm near a campus. I'll just call the Phi Gamma Delta Fiji house and see if I can come up with some donors from that location. So I went over and met with him, and it was very obviously legitimate. It was a large OB/GYN pediatric office. Very large. And it seemed completely and utterly legitimate. So that's how it started. And they didn't do any screening other than they checked to see that you were viable. Well, there's kids around. I'm not sure where to go with that, but they checked your count. And it turned out that the only qualifications were going to be they needed a blonde-haired person, a brown-haired person, and a black-haired person. Brown-haired person is Ted, black-haired person is Terry, and then I had a kind of a body double. They needed another blonde donor.
Everybody wanted the blonde donor.
Yes, well, naturally. And so Russ became a donor. I'm not using last names, and then another guy named Jim. I'm in touch with all of those people. None of them have been contacted by, so they themselves have never registered, and and 2 of the 5 didn't have kids ever. So they're probably going to be undetectable, would be my guess, because they're not going to register after I talk to them.
All it takes is a brother or a sister to do it, though.
You have never heard such profound silence as when I reached out to them. It was. I remember Russ going, well, and in a couple of them hadn't told their wives.
Oh, right.
So, and I've been married 3 times, and I had told each of my wives, I'm not sure why, but I did. So, and Pam, the love of my life, is sitting over there. Fortunately, she was told, so this didn't completely blow her away. And so anyway, this is what we did, and it went on. I continued to do it even after I graduated. My first job out of college was with the Campbell Soup Company frozen food division, and I made $525 a month. So to be able to make to have an additional income was very nice. So I continued on, and I don't know when the others, I know that some other, after I graduated, it continued as kind of a little tradition. So there were some other people who I probably don't even know because they came in after I had left. I just found out about one who had done it that I didn't know had done it. But the 5 of us are all 80 years of age. Jim's 81, I think, and we've been in touch with each other throughout our lives. And Ted, in particular, he and I have been very, very close for many years. So that's how it started, and we were promised absolute anonymity and confidentiality. and that was held, and the arrangement was that the recipients were in the lobby for the doctor's office, and we, the donors, came in through the lab door, and there was a complete and utter separation. No donor, no recipient ever were anywhere near one another. So, and that confidentiality was kept for 60 years, basically, until very recently. And I guess that's kind of history. Now, any questions about this part of this journey? Now's the time.
When did you stop donating? Do you remember the
Well,
very
that's a very good question, because there are some people in this room that exist well beyond when I thought I was still doing it. So, I mean, seriously. I mean, I do not recall going much past the mid-1960s. So I'm beginning to wonder whether there was some freezing going on. Now this,
technology evolved.
the doctor that was doing this, somebody told me, they Googled him. He was apparently quite a bit ahead of his time.
Yeah,
Right.
And
What's so funny?
I said, so I was from.
She was frozen.
Yeah.
So you were frozen.
Yeah.
And I might have been too.
I mean, how do,
I thought I was frozen for.
well, there's probably a subtle distinction between how I treat the frozen.
And the fresh ones.
Yeah, it's not quite the same, right?
Different accent.
We're the reject, right?
Right.
Reject frozen ones.
Yeah, you're
You
the,
and I
yeah,
joked that we matched so high because we were the last vial left. And
I
they
know.
split it.
right.
You're digging around in your
We
bottom.
matched really
We matched really high, like.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, our Centimorgans are
For some
really
reason,
high.
our two, yeah.
So we joked it was that last vial they
What
just
was
split
that?
between our
Her and
moms.
I matched really high, Lisa. and I.
What's the number?
I got matched higher her than anyone.
Okay.
2350 or something like
Okay.
that. Yeah, it's
Kevin
pretty
and
high.
I matched
We
really
got,
high.
we're really high too.
And I was
Yeah.
29
I think I
with
matched-
someone. Oh, that is high. And I have to go back and look.
That's really interesting. At some point in time, we may have to put this young man in charge of that
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
Find out, Joe will find out, I would,
You have a friend?
that puzzles me why that would be, why there would be,
I guess it's, yeah.
well, we're mixing two people. Obviously, there's a woman and a man involved, so maybe, I just don't know why there would be closer matches.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. That is weird. When did you start? What year did you start doing?
Probably 58,
So halfway through
I'm
college.
guessing.
And the youngest one of us was born in 63.
67.
No, the youngest.
Oldest.
63.
Terry.
So
September of
58 to
63.
63, so 5 years with no hits
Right.
so far.
So, that's
Where are
really
Yeah,
interesting.
Where are
the whole
all
time
those
you were in
kids?
college, so far, maybe they just haven't tested.
Right, because I'm sure I did 58, 59, 60. I'm sure all 3 of those years I was actively donating, but we have nobody from that era.
Yeah, right?
Maybe they hadn't perfected the
The
concept
method.
yet.
Maybe you just need to practice.
For that.
Right.
First 5 years, it was all duds.
It's all done.
He was holding us crap. He came out with such promise. too.
Yeah, that's I just wonder how they treat Justify the horse, He's getting $153,000 as a stud stallion. So I think maybe instead of being called a donor, I'd prefer to be called a stud.
You know, if
What do you
anyone
think?
has the right to say it.
Yeah,
The method of delivery is significantly different, but yeah.
Joel, I'm 66, so what did you give him? 67, so right after, okay.
And you're
67.
67.
And then there's a gap, and
That
it's me,
just really
69.
surprises
And
me.
then I'm 70.
70,
And
yeah.
Shannon's 70 as well.
The end of the year.
So did you think about this, Lee, as time went on?
Yeah,
Like, did this come up in your day-to-day life at all?
A very good question. The answer is I would probably go weeks or months without it even crossing my mind as the years rolled along. And then every once in a while I would have that moment where I thought, gee, I wonder, there's some people out there. And I've told a few of you, I've had a couple of occasions where I've seen younger people who would be grandchildren age people. Two guys I've seen. One was a second baseman at UCLA, and they were in the College World Series about 5 years ago. Camera went in tight on the second baseman, and I was sitting in the den watching the game, and I just went, oh boy. I mean, there was little doubt. I'm serious. I mean, whew.
So at what point do you think, did it occur to you that someone may find out as the technology?
Never occurred to me. Never occurred to me.
Technology started to.
Never occurred to me.
Project and.
I had no particular curiosity. My sister, we'll get into my history a little bit. Most everybody knows it, but my sister was very curious about our ancestry, and then she's married to a scientist who's kind of made it part of his life work to track down our family on my stepfather's side. I never met my biological father. And then she's also to track down my mother's maiden name was Hurd, H-U-R-D. So she's tracked down the Hurd family to its, as far as you can track it. I mean, we can get you some information at some point in time. But I was never very curious, so I didn't think about it that often until I had a kid tee off in front of me at a golf course about 6 months ago that there's no doubt in my mind. I mean, I looked, I thought, there's no doubt in my mind. I just sat there. That was before this happened.
The odds are pretty good you had one out there.
Yeah.
Well, Southern California.
Yeah.
Southern California.
Yeah.
What was the process as far as the anonymity? Like, how did they present that to you? Because my mom told me that she was told that both parties were spoken to about, the protocol for not reaching out.
Yeah, right.
Did
Absolutely.
they have a discussion with you about
Oh
that?
yeah, absolutely. They said this. Yeah, I met with the business manager. The first words out of his mouth were, "This needs to be kept utterly confidential on both sides, and don't worry, we will live up to it." And they did.
Yeah.
There was
And, like,
never a breakdown.
Joel and Maria and I knew about it. We've known about it for 35 years or more. And when my parents told me, my mom told me, she did say, like, there is no way they're going to ever know anything. It's, files are sealed and
Well, the clinic doesn't exist anymore, and whatever, and it was paper and pencil filing. I mean, it was hard copy filing then.
It's interesting, a couple of us, and my mother told me the same thing, that, and she alluded to the fact that, my dad was not my biological dad, that the donor was a physician out of UCLA or out of California. So a number of us were told that the donor was out of
Right.
the clinic.
Or
I got a medical student.
Right,
We got
we
a
got medical
it
students.
was whispered in the mother's ear.
Yeah, so we all,
procedure.
a number of us heard that.
So
Yeah.
I
All
heard
donor
differently.
clinics, by the way,
Yes, say that.
they say that. It sounds so good.
Yeah.
The doctor probably had some affiliation with UCLA, whether the clinic was affiliated or not. So it's such a great story, but you're looking
And you'll
at...
never know because it's anonymous. So.
Yeah,
My
right.
mother was told differently. She was told that the donor was a successful businessman that went to a university nearby. So my mom didn't know what UCLA was, so
And what year were you born?
66.
It was before I was successful.
But they could just tell.
And then he was super smart.
I had a lot of
They had
promise.
faith in you, yeah.
Well,
She was told you were super smart too.
well, you've all heard my story. I could have got better grades. There's no doubt about that. But given the effort, I'll match my academic credentials against anybody. Because you're going in 90, 100% prepared. I'm going in 5, 10% prepared. So that's a different way of looking at it. But
So there wasn't a...
no, there was not a none of the donors were medical
They
students.
were
No.
just throwing that out
No.
to make them feel good.
They've all been very successful, all but one. Jim's a sweetheart of a guy, but he hasn't been there. But the others have been enormously successful, led very accomplished, normal lives.
Do you know if they reached out to other fraternities at UCLA?
Well, I have no idea. I kind of suspect not, because that was his connection was the fact that he had been in the same fraternity at another university.
I was wondering what it says about your fraternity that was the first place he reached out to.
Well, that's because he was a member of the same fraternity.
Because you had a different kind of reputation.
Yeah.
I needed that.
Right.
It was not the fraternity. It was not the fraternity you would go to for budding young medical students. We had a lot of athletes, and we had some highly socially skilled people.
Like Animal House, right?
It really was.
Right.
But, you know, I've been serious for a moment. As I look back over the years and I see the people I was around, and we had our share of people that went to medical school and became doctors. But it was a, I think everybody thinks their time in life is always unique, but it was a group of very adept social people. And later on in life, that turned out to be as valuable as a bunch of A's, and
Right.
and we have a bunch
even
of
more
people
so.
with high net worths
Yep.
and low grade point averages. So, and I'm dead serious. We produced an uncommon number of accomplished people with C and B averages. So it's something to think about when you're.
Do you know who the fertility doctor was? Like, I know mine was Dr. Carreau.
Yeah, me too.
Does anyone? I
Oh.
Sheldon.
Sheldon,
He
it
was
was
part-
Sheldon for my mom.
And who was the sort of the doctor that was like the
Carreau. He
he
was the
was
one
the-
that, he
Yeah.
has like a thesis paper online
Right.
that he authored about the genesis of the process. As simple
Yeah.
as it seems, somehow, yeah.
And
so
don't some of your birth certificates have
Mine
has
your-
mine
mine
didn't.
his name is on my birth certificate.
And I met him.
Oh, really?
Frozen.
Well, but they were also delivering babies too.
Yeah, so I-
Yeah, they were OBGYNs. I don't think there was a, where's Lori? I don't think there was, oh, there you are. I don't think there was a distinction that long ago between OBGYNs and
No,
pediatricians.
that's right, right.
Yeah,
It was
they were
kind of
all
a
the-
family practice,
yeah.
it was all in one.
Right, all in one.
Because I was born in Bakersfield, you know, the.
Did they have
doctor
doctors
that
in
delivered-
Bakersfield?
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah.
Once they got off the livestock, then
vets,
they came in
actually.
Yeah.
and delivered babies.
They also were a vet, right?
No, but so the doctor that delivered me in Bakersfield's the one who obviously.
Did you ever know the Urosic family in Bakersfield? Carrot growers? I'm serious.
No, no,
Yeah. Gary Urosic was a football player at UCLA, and I was kidding about being in a movie. Gary was in it too. He actually got discovered.
Oh,
There was a movie called The Tall Story, and they needed to round up some basketball players because
and he was from Bakersfield?
and Gary Urosic became Gary Lockwood, who became a pretty well-known actor. He had his own series for called The
There's
Lieutenant.
people from Bakersfield.
Yeah,
There you are.
yeah, they're big carrot growers. His family was. I just talked to him about 2 weeks ago.
Could you tell us a little bit about our heritage on
I will.
where we came from?
I will.
Besides,
First of all, on my father's side, I know you guys probably know more than I know. I don't really know much about him. He was a musician, piano player, organ player. He had a radio show in Albuquerque and Amarillo. He was married 4 times. He had children, I think somebody told me last night, by all 4 marriages. As a result of that, I have a half-brother that I know. I've never met him, but he lives in Amarillo, Texas. But I don't know very much about his family. I wasn't very curious, and by the time I got curious, my mother had Alzheimer's. I was uncomfortable asking my father what he knew about my biological father. I always felt he probably could have answered some of the questions for me, almost certainly, when I finally did get curious. But I just thought it would be a little hurtful for me to get curious at that point. So I just didn't, I just really wasn't that curious. So I can't speak to that side of the family. My mother's Hurd, Virginia Laura Hurd, and she was born in a probably the worst small town in the United States. And it has a distinction of being a shithole in 1910 and a shithole in 2018.
It's consistent.
Called Columbus, Montana. And how she ended up there, I don't know, but and it's a long way from the very dignified heritage we share, but that's where she started out. I've got a few notes. And then she ended up moving to Albuquerque and then to Los Angeles, and she graduated from high school at from North Hollywood High School. She told me at one point too that I think she went to Manual Arts, which became an all-black high school and still is. But she graduated from North Hollywood High and then went to Albuquerque, where she met my dad, who had some sort of a radio show where he played the piano. She can come. I'll just have to clean up my language. She's probably used to it though, right? Yeah.
Unfortunately. Friends in the family.
Somewhere along the way, I think it was my grandfather, who I never met, that owned a candy store in Albuquerque. So that's something you can put down, and that'll impress somebody. That's like the Kennedys, isn't it? But the other part of this that I've told you all, but that is true. We are related to John Alden. Google him. He was on the Mayflower. He was a Cooper, which meant he was. When you go see who was on the Mayflower. We're all very proud of being Mayflower families. Well, there was a bunch of maniac religious zealots, right, who were getting booted out of England, basically. And then you had 30 people, and John Alden was a carpenter, basically, and he maintained the barrels. A Cooper, are you looking him up there? Yeah. But he then became a very powerful figure in organizing the early colony. And you'll take the time to read about John Alden. He became quite a significant person in the history. Another Hurd family member founded the city in Connecticut. I've never been there. I've been to Connecticut, never at the house. In Woodbury, he founded the city of Woodbury in Connecticut. There's a Hurd house there that is open to the public, which is his. So if you get anywhere near Connecticut, my sister went there. She said it's really cool. It's an old 1608 house that was founded. And another Hurd became a part of the founding group of Harvard College University. I think they still call it Harvard College. Everybody says university, but I think they call it Harvard College. And I think he was apparently a fundraiser of sorts to found the university, which was founded about 15 or 20 years after they arrived at Plymouth. So you are Mayflower-related kids.
Nice.
Which makes being born in Amarillo all the more uncomfortable. Because, I mean, who wants to say you're a Mayflower kid, but you were born in Amarillo, Texas in 1937, on a kitchen table, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty... The baby came early, I guess, and I've told everybody my biological father thought that was a good time to leave my mom, and
That night.
Now, and this is absolutely true. My uncles told me they found him, and he ended up in the hospital that night, and was in the hospital for like a week. They did not take you just didn't dump your wife the night she gave birth in 1937 in a small town in Texas. It's a wonder he lived through it. So bless her heart, she had to imagine being a single mom in 1937 in Amarillo, Texas. And to make matters worse, she once told me that she was aware he was having an affair, and she was on the bus going somewhere, and the woman was sitting across the bus from her. She's like 8 months pregnant with me, looking at that, and she was, she got on a train and moved to Los Angeles by herself with a 2-year-old kid, and made a go of it, and ended up meeting Ernest VanLuewen, who is my stepfather.
How old were you when they got married?
3. And he was a Cal Berkeley electrical engineer.
But yeah, I thought you were only 3 months old.
Pardon?
Weren't you only 3 months old when she left Amarillo?
I think maybe I was,
You weren't 2, you were 3 months old.
You don't remember that?
Thanks. By the way, jump in whenever. Thank you. Yeah, you're right.
3 months, yeah.
Yeah, I was an infant.
3 months.
Wow.
And she remarried, and then they had 2 daughters, and my sisters Ann and Kathy. Kathy is notable. She's batshit crazy. She got on the bus with Ken Kesey.
That's where this comes from.
Right,
We talked about this last time.
And
the Mary
the book,
Frank-
The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, Tom Wolfe wrote.
Yep.
She's mentioned throughout the book. Her name on the bus was Kathy X. And like every woman on the bus, she was intimate with Ken Kesey. And they took the bus all around the country. She had graduated from San Jose State, was working for one of the big advertising agencies in New York. The bus came through New York. Her boyfriend was on it. She got on the bus, and they spent the next year dropping acid in prodigious quantities. And she's never been the same since. But she still gets contacts from Ken Kesey's no longer with us, but I'm not sure why he had such a profound effect on so many people, but he ruined some lives along the way. I met him. The bus came through LA, and they went over to my parents' house, and they all tromped into the house, and my mom called me and said, the bus is here, you may want to come by. So I grabbed a couple of my buddies, because it was like a freak show. They were, you Google it, you'll see they had the bus all decorated. It was, they were flower children, just what was going on. Nothing wrong with that, but I mean, the only problem was,
Further, they made this bus.
yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, there's been some documentaries. There was a recent one, Kathy's in it. It's some old film from the bus days. And she was a very talented artist, and basically kind of ruined her life. She lives in Woodland Hills. I'm in touch with her, and my 2 sisters are not speaking and probably never will.
They're both artists, right?
Yes. And VanLuewen, the actual full name was Storm VanLuewen. They dropped the Storm when they moved here, but and it's Storm VanLuewen. Yeah.
Storm VanLuewen's good. That's
Right.
yeah. That's
Maybe
very strong.
Maybe I ought to change it. Huh? Preston Storm VanLuewen.
Yeah.
I'm Preston Lee VanLuewen, by the way. I go by Lee because I got teased about being Preston.
Really?
Yeah. I hit somebody with a brick for calling me. When I was about 8, I threw a brick at him, and unfortunately hit him on the head. And
away from
then
him.
there's a knock on the door, and this mother and this kid with a huge bandage on his head show up, say, and my mom, she was a gem. She was a remarkable human being. She didn't have a lot of formal education, but she was as wise as they come, And she picked me up and kept me on my feet, and she is a phenomenal lady. So it's too bad you couldn't have all met her. Pam hasn't met her either. She's been gone. She died of Alzheimer's at age 81. So part of the curiosity I had, I wasn't able to get answers to once I got curious, because she had Alzheimer's and couldn't answer. Anything else they should know, Pam?
How about the medical stuff?
Yeah.
Medical stuff. I finally found out that, and I have an absolute mental block, the lung disease that everybody
Cystic
gets.
fibrosis?
COPD.
No,
Cystic fibrosis? Emphysema.
emphysema. I was told by Ann that his cause of death was emphysema, if that can be a cause of death, but it was a lung-related disease. Pardon?
Oh, your half brother.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
Bruce?
Yeah, Bruce. Yeah, you know him better than I do.
Yeah, I know his wife.
I think everybody in that era chain smoked non-filtered cigarettes, so I'm pretty confident his death was probably directly attributable to smoking Lucky Strikes, and lots of them. And my mom ended up with Alzheimer's late in life. Other than Alzheimer's, she was as healthy as a horse, like some Alzheimer's patients are, and they can live on and on and on because everything's still working. And as far as I'm concerned, I do have, everybody knows I have a form of blood cancer called Waldenstrom's something. It was diagnosed with a MRI because I was having a knee problem, and the orthopedist did a MRI exam, and when I went to see him for the follow-up, he said, "Well, your knee's okay, but you have cancer." I remember saying, well, But it's bone marrow. It's a form of bone marrow cancer, and you could see in the MRI, he showed me a normal bone marrow MRI in mine, which looks like a kaleidoscope of, it looks horrendous. Pam saw it.
It's a form of blood cancer, not
Yeah.
bone marrow cancer.
Okay.
It's a form of blood cancer.
But whatever my count was low enough that there was no need to treat me, which would have been radiation and chemotherapy and whatever. And then my numbers have gone down, and this was diagnosed 6 years ago maybe, and my numbers, which were up at like 3,400, you need to get like to 4,000 before they want to start doing treatment. And then they've consistently gone down, so it's not going to be a fatal form of cancer.
So self-healing of cancer is what you're going to pass down.
I'm a healer. I'm a healer.
Storm VanLuewen.
Yeah.
Strong
From the
self-healer.
inside, strong.
Storm VanLuewen, the healer.
Almighty.
They told them that this was never taken out. And that if the numbers ever got up so high, they would give the chemo and knock it down. But this would never,
It
ever.
has a very low mortality rate.
Well, good.
So I'm good.
That's
But
comforting.
it lowers his immunity system, so he has to be a little bit careful. Like if the grandchildren have colds and stuff, he has to kind of watch it.
Don't want to be around too many people.
So I'm borderline anemic. I'm just slightly anemic, which is attributable to the blood cancer. I don't even know I'm anemic. I don't even feel it. We all know I'm a recovering alcoholic, so there's that. What else? I don't have any other issues.
Well, basal cells.
Cancer, skin cancer.
Oh yeah, I've had tons of skin cancers. I mean, look at me. And of course, in my era, we all went to the beach. I surfed. I did all that stuff without any sunscreen. It didn't exist. People put baby oil on to, And you start paying for that in your 60s, by
I've
the
already
way.
started paying for it.
Have you?
Oh, yeah. I've had 3 units. I've had.
Have you basal cells? Yeah.
Everybody's
I've had.
Now raise your hand if you've had basal cells.
Yeah, how many?
Oh, that's because you're the Mexican is helping you guys.
What's the other one? Squamous? Squamous?
Well, there's,
I've had
I'm
one,
serious. They have better
one
skin.
squamous,
I have basal cells.
tons of basal cells,
Yeah.
and no melanoma. And so,
You have.
but,
You have Kevin, apparently.
You have. Everyone looks at their spouse
In
for
our
help.
23andMe, we also received something about our eyes. I can't remember the name.
Macular
Macular
degeneration.
degeneration.
Yeah.
Macular.
And we all got that, didn't we?
Yeah.
I did not. You didn't.
You didn't. Okay.
I didn't, I haven't.
You just had one deviant.
I mean, we don't have it. We all have the genes.
Slightly
Right.
elevated.
No, I did
Yeah.
not
I had
expect
to-
for that.
Yeah, we both had it.
No.
That was the one thing in common.
I got
think
that and
we all-
Alzheimer's.
Yes.
Really?
It was
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
what
Yours
form does
froze
that
out.
take? What are the
But
symptoms?
I got it. Mine frozen too, I think.
No, I got
And
it
he
too.
said it's like it's a switch. So it can exist in you, but you can live a full life without it. But if the switch flips, then blindness, pretty much.
Well, that's not too bad.
Well, unless you're flying airplanes for a living.
Especially you.
Planes fly themselves.
Yeah, you always brag about how you
I said software.
put it on autopilot.
What's a little blindness, you know?
Yeah.
Make sure
it's not the end of the
Tammy
world.
Yeah.
fixes the
It's better than being a sperm donor.
Look at Stevie Wonder,
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Lee, would you
Roy
like to share-
Orbison.
Would you like to share any details about the children you had in your marriages?
Of course. Now, one thing that is interesting, I grew up in Los Angeles. I'd been married 3 times. All 3 of my wives were actually born in Ohio.
Oh, wow.
Think about that.
What are the odds?
Seriously, that's got to be some kind of a record.
Yeah, that does.
So this is.
My first wife, Lori, moved from Youngstown, Ohio to Southern California when she was a small kid.
Her name was Lori?
Lori, Lenore Marie Guerrero. And my second wife, Marilyn Osborne VanLuewen, was born in Columbus, Ohio. Lori and I had 2 children, Damon and Tracy. Tracy's mid-50s and Damon's 52. I always forget whether Tracy's 56.
She's a year older than me.
And you're 50.
Almost five.
And then Damon, who's 50. Tracy's a real estate broker manager in the Valley. She's doing really, really well. She had a little bit of a tough go of it growing up, but she got her wheels on. She also went to UCLA, graduated cum laude,
Wow.
having not graduated from high school, getting a GED and then going to Santa Monica College and majored in history and did very well. My son Damon is an English teacher at Windward School, which is a fancy-ass, very expensive private school in West Los Angeles. And I'm going to make sure the 2 of you talk at some point in time, just because I think I sent you an email about this thing he went to from the Exeter English faculty put on some teaching method for English teachers. He thought the Exeter English department people that were just off the charts competent and good. And then I remarried Marilyn, who is a school teacher now. She graduated from college after we got married. She was an English ESL. She's fluent in Spanish. I mean like really fluent. And Keisha and Kyle are my kids from that marriage. Keisha's 43. She's a school teacher as well for LA Unified School District. Kyle is working he's a concierge at the Fairmont Miramar Hotel in Santa Monica. And he's doing well now. He had some bumps along the road. And is married, and he has 3 children, twin girls, identical twin girls, 3 years old, and Ever, who's 6. And then Damon has 2 boys. She's 5. Ever's 5? She's going to grammar. She's going to kindergarten. Okay. She's probably right.
Take notes, Mark. You should say
Yeah.
that.
Well, let me rephrase that. She's probably absolutely right.
And what did you do for work?
I was an executive recruiter. I started out in outside sales. My first job was with the Campbell Soup Company, frozen food division, Swanson TV dinners. And I went to the placement office and at UCLA and got Campbell Soup Company was interviewing, and so I went to work for Campbell Soup Company. then for Dictaphone Corporation, which again selling dictating equipment, and then with a real estate investment firm. I got a real estate license, and we put together limited partnerships, and that's when I started to do pretty well. That was a viable company. We were doing, those of us that were putting together these deals. I was on the side that found the investors, and then I ended up sending my resume to a executive recruiting firm in Los Angeles, the only one that existed then. And I got a call from them. I thought they were calling about a position, but they were recruiting for their own staff. So I ended up going to work for a local Los Angeles-based executive recruiting firm, and then a firm called Korn Ferry International started in 1970, and I'd known Richard Ferry, the Ferry and Korn Ferry, and he called me when the firm started, and I joined them in 1970 and stayed there for 25 years. The firm went from a dozen of us and a couple of administrative assistants, and when I left we had 2,800 employees. Wow. And instead of one office we had 110 all over the world, and it went public, and fortunately I owned stock, and so that, even though we had a lockup, you know what a lockup is in a public offering. Yeah, well, my lockup was onerous because it was it's a professional service firm. So if you didn't lock people up pretty tight, you don't have a product, you have the people. So everybody goes, hey, see ya. So yeah, the stock came out at 14, and I was able to sell some over the next couple of years, but the majority of it I had to keep, and it went from 14 to 44 to 6. Wow. But anyway, I still was okay, but it would have been a lot more okay.
44 is better than 6?
Yeah.
I'm the business guy.
Yeah, it takes you got a keen sense of the obvious. So I was an executive recruiter, and I recruited primarily for real estate companies. I had some fascinating clients over the years. Howard Hughes Corporation, when Howard Hughes was still alive.
Oh, interesting.
And I was in their offices when he was there. That was during the beard and fingernail stage. And then they sold a lot of their assets to a company, and then the family needed to wind things down, and so I did a search for the Hughes family in Houston to find somebody to wind down the real estate assets. And I met, I'm going blank in his name now, one of the family members who's an attorney in Houston, prominent attorney, bears an eerie resemblance to Howard Hughes. I sat in that office going, this is Howard Hughes. I mean, he looked just like Howard Hughes.
Wow.
But Howard Hughes he had like 200 family members. A lot of them were very unsophisticated. Mm-hmm. And he bought up real estate. I mean, we would be in meetings and somebody would say, God, we just found out he bought a gas station over here in Las Vegas and a liquor store over there. And he just accumulated. He'd be driving around at 3 in the morning with his driver and say, let's buy that, let's buy this. And he bought 25,000 acres outside Las Vegas, which is now Summerlin, the largest, one of the most successful planned communities of all time.
Wow.
He was a brilliant guy, but an odd, to say the least. So I was an executive recruiter, left in 95, went on my own as a recruiter, and I did an assignment a year ago, last year.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've got a client, a family, the Shea family down in Orange County, Shea Homes, who we talked about. J.F. Shea Company, which is a company that's the largest tunneling contractor, 130-year-old company. So the family and I have become pretty close. They're a privately held, very quiet, extraordinarily wealthy group of people that drive old cars and don't talk about money. They're the fun. I've had some exposure to the business community in the United States that has been less than I've seen a lot of very dishonest people, to be honest. But they are not. They are phenomenal people. So I'm retired, basically, but I was an executive recruiter.
Do you have any food allergies? No. Ham over here.
No.
Okay.
I have all sorts of dust and grass and so I have a lot of, and in fact I went through the shots for quite a while. Yeah, and it helped. It helped a lot. But I do have a lot of allergies to grass and trees and stuff like that. Huh? And it doesn't get better. I mean, my nose runs all. This is an attractive conversation.
So it's not running.
So does your nose run a lot, Maria?
Mine's running now.
Not producer. Yeah.
So athletic sports, what did we talk about some running?
Oh,
and
basketball.
Yeah, I played basketball in high school. I like to say I played at UCLA. I actually didn't play, but I was on the freshman team and the varsity. So I'm a little liberal with saying I played. But what happened is I played in high school, and we had a great team. We won the city championship my junior year. I went to Santa Monica College and played there, another guy from my high school, while I got the grades to transfer to UCLA. We had quite a team at Santa Monica College. It was when the Korean War vets were coming back. So we had some 29-year-old guys on the team. A guy named Buddy Williams, who was 6'9", African-American guy, stone cold Marine killer. He's on the team. We got in a fight in a scrimmage, and well, it didn't end well for me.
Run away.
I threw the ball at Buddy as hard as I could, and as soon as it left my hands, I thought,
Regret.
mistake. And we practiced it. Santa Monica College didn't have its own gym, so we practiced at the junior high school gym, which had those fold down seats. So I started running. That was my solution to the problem. He would have killed me. He would have killed me. So I started running up and down the bleachers. The only thing, I knew he couldn't catch me if I did that. If we ran straight ahead, I know he would have caught me.
It's a great story.
So finally everybody stopped him, and the poor coach, who by the way was from Indiana, his name was Ralph Blemker, and he was this wonderful, I think he must have been a minister at some point in time, and he had this team of misfits, of Korean War vets, and I mean, it was a mess, and he had this. So then I transferred to UCLA, and Kelly Johnson, another guy from high school, and Santa Monica College, and I decided to go out for the freshman team, and we did, and we made it, but they were halfway through the season, and so the roster was set. So Kelly was a phenomenal defender, so he played, I didn't. And so I quit. And then my junior year, somebody here knows Billy Kilmer. Yeah, there you go. Billy Kilmer, who was a quarterback on the football team, later an NFL legend because he was a heavy drinking, colorful guy. And Jim Steffen, who was also a football player, were on the basketball team. They were super short-handed for some reason. John Wooden was the coach. And so they said, Lee, you got to come out. I mean, if nothing else, I mean, you'll be on the team. And, well, what that meant was they carried, I think the roster was 14, but they traveled 12. And to get to the 12, you had to play one-on-one with somebody in a limited, just to travel, right? And then I wasn't going to see much action. So I stayed for like a month and basically got beat up in practice. And then finally thought, no, I'm not going to do this. I mean, I didn't have much of a future, but I was good enough to get that far. And it was an era when there were people my height playing. I never guarded anybody taller than me. I mean, there were always somebody 5'9". I could jump, but which doesn't help you much because underneath the basket you got taller guys and you can't jump through them. But I got by, and you you couldn't carry the ball like this either. You had to keep your hand on top. So it was a different game. And we probably had the worst in the late 50s. Wooden never had a losing season, but we had probably the worst 2 or 3 years in a row. I think they were like 114, lost 12 kind of a thing. So it was a time when it was, I'm minimizing, but nevertheless, that's it. Then I ran a lot as I turned 40, like everybody else did. Did a decathlon, actually was ranked.
What about the surfing? Because Brett surfs, right? Yeah,
I surfed, yeah.
I surfed in high school. So when did you surf? And what
I
kind of
surfed
sport?
let me think. I started as soon as I could get a car or get a ride. So I was 16, maybe.
You had a big longboard.
We had 10-foot boards, 10-6.
And where did you surf?
We went primarily to Malibu. Just about, sometimes Topanga, which can break, but not very often. Malibu was pretty consistent. I mean, you can have days like this, but so we went mainly to Malibu. Sometimes we'd go down to the Huntington Pier.
Is that where you surf?
Yeah.
Yeah, Huntington Pier.
I started surfing the south side of the pier when I was
Did you?
6
Yeah,
years old.
yeah, the south side of the pier was where we went in the mid 50s.
Malibu during those years was like the what was it, the Bridget, what was the
Oh yeah, the Gidget.
Yeah, like all that stuff, right? Woody's
Yeah.
and
Oh, it was just what you thought it was. There was a fence that ran all the way up to the point, and everybody would lean their boards against this kind of
that
dilapidated
wall's
thing.
still there.
Huh?
That block wall's still
Is it?
at Malibu.
I drive by it all the time. I haven't noticed.
Yeah.
We would occasionally go to Leo Carrillo, which is a inconsistent but cool little break. But nobody board surfed right in Santa Monica Bay. It was just lineups that just broke. There was State Beach had occasional kind of little peak breaks, but mainly we went to Malibu. It wasn't that crowded, and they were perfect waves.
Yeah.
Did you ever surf there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've surfed there a number of times. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a perfect wave. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just
except for now there's 3,000.
except there's
people
a,
trying to-
exactly, and you can't park your car anyway. So.
Can you talk a little bit about music? Because I think a bunch of us are musical, or our children are musical, and your dad was a musician.
Was a
you said,
professional
and-
musician.
And then we talked a bunch
Right.
about the kind of music you like.
Yeah, I was always interested. My mom had me take clarinet lessons, which I resisted, and then ended up really liking. So I was actually a band geek for a while. So I played the clarinet. Yeah.
Band geek?
Yeah.
They wouldn't let the violin in the band.
Yeah.
So poking somebody's eye out, I guess.
Yeah.
But my daughter started with the clarinet.
Right, you
We
told me
wondered,
that.
Yeah, where that, wondered where all the music came from, because my family is the one I grew up with.
Then in college, we had not an a cappella group, we had a group that we actually made it to the finals of the spring sing. I was the bass, we had 5
Oh,
guys.
they still do spring sing.
Yeah, do they?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Big deal.
And so I have a pretty good bass voice. It's turned into a growl now without much range.
My
Okay.
soprano is now an alto.
Right. Yeah. But I could go low, and we needed somebody like that. So I probably have, immodest as this thing, I probably have a lot more ability than athletics took over, where had I not done that, I probably would have pursued music, because I have a high level of interest, Pam will tell you.
Who are some of your favorite musicians or singers or groups?
That's really, I'm coming from a completely different era, and I put that through. I think about it a lot, trying to isolate, and it's really hard to do. But that golden era of Linda Ronstadt, the Eagles, Jackson Brown, all of those people living together in up the Laurel Canyon. That whole group I've always really liked. And there's an unknown guy named John David Souther, J.D. Souther, who wrote most of the songs for the Eagles. We're going to go see him in San Luis Obispo in October. So that golden era group, I love the Stones, I love Adele, I like some rap. I went through, in fact, a little more rap than most people would believe. My son-in-law works for Sean Combs. I have an African-American son-in-law and 3 mixed grandchildren, and he works directly for Sean, so which is a mixed blessing. He's a very talented guy, but difficult to deal with. God, it's hard. If I had to pick, I love Boz Scaggs. I'm going to see him soon. Let me give that a little more thought.
When you look around the room, Lee, what are you thinking right now? I mean, what is this like for you?
Boy, I've been asked that the last 2 or 3 days. I can tell you the most profound feeling I've had, and I talked to Pam about it driving over today, and I talked to you about it last night. I just went blank on your name.
Okay, Taylor.
Yeah, that's right. I've had this bizarre melancholy that I finally kind of got in touch with, which is this feeling of needing to protect you guys. And it's like at times kind of overpowering. I'm going, I got to make sure they're all okay. And I say to myself, well, I can't do that. But that's the feeling I've had, is I just want to make sure all you guys are okay. And it's been that feeling more than anything else. A bit overwhelming, but what's fun to watch is the relationship all of you have with one another is just, I mean, I just stand there with tears in my eyes looking at how wonderful this is to see this.
It's real.
I think we've all said we want them, everybody's been terrific, and from the beginning. I mean, it's everybody.
And it has to be the DNA. Like it's unlikely that this many people would interact like this. Just so socially.
Well, there could be some weird vibe that goes on that is maybe outside the scientific realm. That this little beating heart of DNA is there.
But I thank you for answering that phone.
Yeah, seriously.
This would be an empty room if you didn't pick up that phone.
And that's something.
And you.
And if I didn't stop.
You're the stalker a little bit.
Right.
Stalker.
I know.
Yeah, I would say meeting everybody yesterday, we are okay. These are good people, and they have good families, and thank you.
No doubt.
Seriously,
No doubt
We're
about
all
it.
grateful.
Thank you. It just keeps.
And you could have just gone the other direction on this, so we appreciate you.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Jump all the other direction.
I went through. I thought this through very, very carefully, and I had decided to engage. And then I said to Pam, "We have a psychologist in San Luis Obispo who's brilliant. If you ever need help, brilliant.
Does he do a family discount?
Yeah.
We all go at once.
We can see them all together."
Group therapy.
Yeah, there's no textbook on this.
So Pam and I went to see Dan, and we told Dan the story, and he just looked at us and he said, "Lee, this is an opportunity to really help some people." And he said, "I think you really need to do this." And I said, "Well, that's where I was headed." And I can't tell you, I mean, that was what I was going to do anyway. But
What was your guttural reaction when you first heard that? Was it more of, I want to do this, or you just have to...
the turning point was Brett, for sure.
Yeah.
Even though he showed up, just.
You made the right decision. I mean, you'll be criticized by not people in this room, but if you tell that story to other people, they will probably universally say you shouldn't have done that.
Right.
Okay? That's probably what they would say. And they're wrong. They are wrong. Because would I have engaged in the absence of you coming by? Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. Seeing this person
Actually exists.
in front of me, looking like me, and then as Marlo and Shelby come walking in, and I go, well, this is go. No, seriously, that's
He was happy yesterday, it was, the circumstance and just the probability of everything playing out the way it did. He goes, had you not been outside, if you'd been, if you got up to the door, I was gonna knock.
Had you had company
Or was there somebody else that
Yeah.
answered, you would have, turned around and ran, and, the fact that you happened to be there one-on-one, and, it just moved like that.
I think
What was wrong with
What
that?
did you
I felt
say?
sorry for him.
It was endearing.
Yeah, that probably helps.
Well, that was an odd encounter.
Yeah, tell the camera that stuff.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Brett, no.
But
Let's reenact it. Can you guys?
They go through the same story, he's stretching.
Right, yeah, go
And he's
on the wall.
stretching,
Yeah.
I'm walking, and I see him. I was on the phone with Bob, and I said,
Oh, really?
we were having this discussion on, it was kind of a legal advice thing.
Likelihood of getting arrested.
And
You want to get that from Bob, yeah?
Yeah. And Marlo, my cousin, daughter, down the street, and I just saw him leaning against his house, stretching his hamstrings, and I said, he's there. I hung up on you. No goodbye.
No goodbye, you just hung
I
up.
just hung up, and I remember approaching him from behind, and I remember thinking, stay on the street, stay on public property, don't, trespassing, any number of things. I remember if he calls, he could hit me, call me, whatever, I didn't know the response. And I said, excuse me, and he turned around, and you thought I was, how did you describe me?
Well,
Special?
I thought he was a special needs guy that was lost. And I didn't see a car. He just appeared,
No, it's true. The look on his face, like he knew he thought I needed help.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
And you did.
Yeah. Did you hear that, man? Said have you changed your opinion?
But so then it gets, I'm on the street, we're probably about this far apart.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And I didn't want him to think that I had driven 5 hours to his house, so I said something like, I just been driving down from Morro Bay, and I happened to swing by, and I'm one of the donor people, a donor or something, and he thought, you're a donor, he thought donate, he thought I was...
I thought charitable donation.
Right.
It almost was, yeah. Yeah.
So he says, what kind of donation? And I said, sperm. One word. And he said, this is where,
You go blank?
45 seconds earlier, I'm wondering if he's going to hit me or call the cops. And he says, looks me right in the eye and says, you're my son. And I was not ready for that word. I've never heard that word actually in my whole life. And I couldn't talk. I couldn't, I don't know, Marlo was watching it from the truck. She thought I was having some kind of a episode. And he just put his hand on my shoulder and he said, let's go talk. Or come on in, let's talk. And then it was, and watching, when you said, I watched him make decisions throughout that 4 hours. I saw you go from the news to, it was the strangest thing I've ever seen. We were sitting there and then he goes, let's go to lunch. And then
Grandpa's buying lunch.
Grandpa's buying lunch. And then he said, we were eating and he said, so you guys are getting together in August? I said, yeah. And he said, do you think I should go? And he looked at Pam and she goes, I think you should go. It'd be good for you. And he goes, okay, I'll be there. Just like that. Like just the quickest decision process I've ever seen. And then I remember one thing he said that was pretty profound. I was driving you home. He's sitting next to me in my truck and I'm like, how did this guy get here? And he said, I knew this was coming. It's a good thing I knew this was coming sooner or later. And yeah, I mean, you've just been so generous. And you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to be here,
Seriously,
you
it's
know,
really cool.
And it's, look at this.
Yeah.
It's from picking up the phone.
There's no guidebook, but it was absolutely the right thing to do. And to answer your question, in the absence of him showing up, I probably would have engaged, but more, let's do some emails and texts, and probably kept it a little arm's length.
Yeah.
And
Made it real.
and it made it absolutely. I mean, there was after that, there was just in my mind no other course of action. Seeing Dan was just a double check,
I haven't seen Lee this joyful and happy in a long time.
Oh, it's made us
What
pretty
a
happy.
legacy. Look what
That's
you,
cool.
look what
I
you.
know.
Fantastic.
Then maybe.
Yeah.
And this is just 10%.
That's keeping it real.
it might be more like 1%.
Yeah.
I have to, just so right after he met you, he sent me a text, Brett, so it's the funniest damn thing. He said, I did it, and I'm like, congratulations. Anyway, thanks, it's a funny story. I stayed on the street, parenthetically, public property, and I was prepared to allow him to punch me 3 times before I defended myself. He goes, he thought I was special needs because I couldn't form logical sentences.
Yeah.
I am in stitches when I'm reading this.
It was so dysfunctional.
I thought you tell the exact same story from the other side of that. Oh my God. That's so funny.
Then he calls me.
Oh, that's
laughing.
She had a weird reaction.
Well, he's telling me I just met Lee. Yeah, right. I'm laughing
Laughing like a
hysterically.
laugh I've never heard come out of her. Like, I'm looking at Marlo, you're on speakerphone and we're going, something's not right.
I'm laughing, and he said, "No, Maria." I'm like, "Yeah," and I'm still laughing. I couldn't believe him until Marlo. I hear Marlo's voice. "No, Maria, it's true." I'm like, "What?" And then I got serious at that point because I was in shock at that point. So, and then
It's been a long wait for you, you know, since
I was 17.
18. You
Yeah.
were
14.
14.
Yeah. And
Oh, we
then-
should go around and say how old we were when we found out.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's a good one.
53.
Pretty recent.
Right.
You have no idea.
Right, it was Joel and I for the longest time on 23andMe. What, we 2014?
Yep, exactly. It's
Right.
almost 40.
That long ago.
That's when we found each other.
But
but-
Oh.
you've known you were donor
Right.
conceived before that.
So I had been on before that.
Right, and
How long did you, was it just after you got on that you made yourself visible?
a few months.
I think I
Right.
had been on for a year.
Right,
And you were alone on there?
Yeah. And
yeah.
then a sister popped up and I thought it was one of the sisters, because I have all half siblings in my life.
Right.
So I thought it was
True.
maybe it was one of my sisters, just went on there without me noticing.
Right.
And then I was surprised.
Then I popped up, and Joan sent me a beautiful email. There's just beautiful, which made me feel so comfortable to call him. And I was in shock too. I was at a restaurant with a good friend of mine, just in shock, and I was so happy to find him. Just somebody who I had same interests, or I can speak to. We kind of look alike, you know, the eye thing, and
Plus the families we grew up with like crazy, so.
they
I love that too.
We're the same sibling.
Yeah. So,
When
and
did you
then-
find out, Joel?
About her?
No,
No, just that you
About
were
what?
donor
When I was
conceived.
14, it was after my father had died.
And your mother told you.
And my mother, I asked her and I was adopted first. And she said, no, but. I was like, but. Yeah, I know.
Right, right.
And you asked that because you just didn't fit in.
Yeah, something, but I don't look that different.
Yeah.
Do I seem strikingly different? No.
You just
Yeah,
instinctually
yeah,
knew
it's just
something.
instinct.
Yeah. I do look very different, right, Melissa? My daughter, I light skin, light hair amongst,
You're a blonde father.
amongst a sea of my lovely Mexican little family, but I always stood out, and just didn't have the same interests as everyone. So I was, my daughter, what do you call me, the black sheep in the family? Yeah.
that's
The
cool.
white sheep. White sheep.
How old were you when you found out?
17. I was 17. My mom finally told me after persistingly asking her, why don't I look like anyone? Why does everyone stare at me so oddly?
Did your
So-
parents, because I found out when I was 18, and my mom told me that, because when she told me, I was like, why did we have to wait so long to do this? I mean, I've known something was going on all this time. And did your parents mention that it was because of what they were told at the clinic?
Yeah, precisely.
Me too.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
that it was forever
keep it
supposed to be a
forever
secret.
secret.
They were
Oh,
honoring
yeah,
their,
she
They were-
mentioned
and this is
that.
where the psychologist back there got it all wrong. Like, I mean, as far as the anonymity for your sake, I understand that, but they should have told us.
Just that we're done.
And when you're sitting there every meal and every day going, what's going on here? Like, you know, and why am I so different? And they're keeping it under the rug. It's not they should have advised, I think, in my opinion, they should have advised to tell us sooner.
That's interesting, and we had a slightly different experience because we're full siblings, so even though we don't look like our 6'3" father, clearly, we could at least always, that felt very familiar,
Right.
Right.
I had a completely different experience. I grew up with my brother, and I would have never guessed this in a million years.
same
We're
here.
close.
Same as me.
We had a lovely childhood. My parents were amazing. And when it was our stepfather that finally, when we started to get ill and just told my brother, I just said, oh, he's losing it, because there is no way that.
So you had similar interests and everything? like you-
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. And we still do, and yeah, it's just amazing.
So I found out when I was 40. So I came out to my mom. So here was this big thing. I'm coming out at 40. And I'm like, I'm going to get married and I'm going to be a mother. Because Kim had just given birth. So I thought this was big news.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't think there was anything she could one-up me on. And I'm like, I'm gay. And she's like, okay, how was Paloma conceived? And I'm like, that's the weirdest question.
That's where you're going.
And I said, she's a sperm donor baby. And she said, well, you are too.
Wow.
Same discussion.
Wow.
Because I thought, she's freaking out about the gay thing. Well, it turns out I never talked to her about it again. Because I just thought that she was like bored to hyperbole. So, and then she died in September, and then in October I found the 3 of them. I'm like, oh, she was
serious.
Oh, she was serious. She was serious. Yeah, so I would say she went on my coming out story.
Yeah.
Get out there.
Joe was the,
When I found out at
Poor
17,
show.
because of the way I felt growing up, and I have my parents who raised me are lovely people. They love me to death. I never would have thought I grew up without. They gave me what they could, and primarily love, which I do have to say.
One
that.
word.
Yeah.
But I always make sure that my daughter knew about the part of me that we don't know about, because her growing up,
Horseshoe?
she was
Horseshoe.
very interested
But if not,
in music and reading and school, and she also stood out in the whole family as well, so I never wanted her to feel out of place. So, I mean, that's why I told her that she grew up.
Okay, maybe it's
you found out-
horseshoe.
I was 6 months ago. So yeah, but I told this story to a couple of you, but my mom had some mental issues and believed she was ultimately schizophrenic. And so over the years, she lobbed out, well, he's not your father anyway, right? So, but my sister and I, is she really serious? Because my dad never said anything. So, so as time passed on, we just thought, she's definitely out there. And then ultimately, it turns out that my sister went and 23andMe and found out she had a different biological father. So then that's when we took the test, and I found out obviously it was pretty interesting because my dad was a very eccentric guy, 8th grade education. I mean, we lived in Idaho on a farm with no power and electricity when I was in 6th
Oh,
and 7th
wow.
grade.
Wow.
We were constantly broke, and we were just moving from one place to another. But I just was couldn't, but great guy, he was very loving, he was a wonderful man, but I just never connected in that. I thought, I don't do insurance, right? You know, I went the other direction, so just kind of an interesting, you try to affiliate yourself with that. I'm like, I don't know.
Hi, it's okay to come. I couldn't send you a text that wasn't going
I was just like,
out. So come on
watch
by.
TV, I don't,
Right.
We're looking
I don't have a
forward.
reservation on that.
Okay,
Really-
bye.
Really brilliant guy, but eccentric, so.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go to school, I'm going to work for an insurance company, I'm going to get a job,
Is he still alive?
No, he died in 65, 20 years ago when he had prostate cancer.
Oh.
So then I really started, I wonder if there's, what about my
Right.
background, and that's when I started asking my mom, and when he lived with us the last 3 months before he passed away, and he never brought it up. So I didn't want him to feel bad if he didn't want me to know, and maybe right before he passed, so I never really had the conversation with him, and then, but my mom had planted that seed along that.
I called her Pam, I'm sorry.
It was a surprise, but not totally a surprise.
Yeah.
But it was nice to get affirmation. I said, 6 months ago. And you're one of my first conversations. Joe was very calming.
Yeah,
Well,
he is.
it's a long story.
I got that email.
Well, now there's a video how to.
Do you guys do impersonations of each other? That's really something.
We had to put Bob back together again.
A little bit.
Yeah, 53 after all.
Yeah, I just found out 6 months ago too.
Yeah.
And how did you find out?
Lisa?
Yeah, Lisa,
Yeah.
she was the quarterback early on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she had all the answers. I didn't even have to, she already knew everything. So it was like all my questions were answered and I couldn't believe it.
And I had only known for 2 days when I talked to you.
Yeah, so you had just found out too.
We could tell.
Yeah. That first week was a wild ride.
Yes, for all of us, Lisa, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, no, you weren't there for that first week.
But Easter weekend.
Oh, that
that's
was
when it all-
round
Easter
2.
weekend, that's
That
right.
was round
That
2.
was Easter week?
First week was Lori and I
I
and
messaged
Christy.
her.
Right, you, me, and
and
Lori.
said
We thought it was
we
just
matched.
us
Right.
three.
You were
Yeah.
only an ancestry.
We were only
We were only on
Well, the
Ancestry.
best one was the recessive gene story
Yeah.
in class.
Oh my gosh,
That's
that is the
Yeah,
best.
the little
Oh,
budding
yeah.
scientist here,
Oh, you
yeah.
want to tell us about that?
Yeah, tell us about that.
So we found out, my sister and I found out about 4 or 5 years ago.
I was 48.
Officially.
6 years ago.
Officially. However, I kind of found out in the 7th grade because there was a science teacher, and he was teaching about dominant and recessive genes. And Laura and I, our mother, has blue eyes, no freckles, dark hair, and our father, 6'3", blue eyes, very dark hair, no freckles. So in the science class, the teacher was giving a lecture about how 2 blue-eyed parents couldn't have brown-eyed kids because it's 2 recessive genes. And after class, I went up and told him, well, my sister and I both have brown eyes, so
you're
there.
wrong.
And so there goes your theory. So much for your education. So then and he said, and I clearly remember it, he said, that's not, and I think he was about ready to say possible. And then he clicked and he said, that's highly unlikely. And I'm convinced he went home and scratched out that lesson plan if I ever got it.
Yeah,
That
he
was-
probably did. He probably went,
Yeah,
oh boy,
well,
better.
I thought I had this down.
I know.
Right?
That's funny.
So that was fascinating.
Lee,
No, no, sorry.
when
Wait.
you found out about Joel and I, you were a little bit in shock.
Yeah, and I think I made the right decision at the time.
Yeah.
My sister called, and she had been in touch with Maria and Joel. My sister Ann, who lives in Denver. And she called me and said, I guess you must have been a sperm donor. She did not know that because she had, you know. And
And we didn't know who Ann was, by the way,
Right.
at all.
And I said, well, let me think about it. And I thought about it for a while, called her back, and I said, I think probably I shouldn't engage at this point. So tell them I wish them the best. And so she called back and said, I talked to both of them, and they totally understood. And so we'll just go from here. And
And when was that? How many years ago was that?
That was probably, it wasn't that long, was it? Seems to me like it was a year ago.
No, that's when Bob showed up.
Well, I got in touch with Keisha in February. That was
Of this year.
This year.
Yeah.
That was the second time. See, I didn't know about them. I didn't know they had contacted.
Yeah, we didn't even.
So we thought we
Oh.
were the first contact. So then when I met
Oh,
Maria,
I
she
didn't know
said,
that.
we were in contact a couple of years ago. I said, oh, really? Because I was in contact at this point 2 months before
Right,
with Keisha. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, we talked.
Oh.
but I didn't know
oh.
you were contacted twice at the when I first got in
okay.
touch.
We were on two
Okay.
different.
Because I didn't know Maria yet. Yeah, we're on two
Right.
different sites.
And Joel
Ancestry,
and I,
23andMe.
Right.
right. And Joel and I knew you weren't ready, so we just, we
And
stayed
had I
away.
met you first, I would have never, well, I would have known who he was. I wouldn't have even.
You guys should have just showed up at his house.
Well,
Moral of the story.
he might have punched
They might have
us
gotten
those
punched
three
then.
times, I don't know.
And you know what's funny? You're the last one to join the group.
I know.
And you were the one to go
I
to
was
the
just driving from Morro Bay. I had 4 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
They both stopped by and said
I'm gonna
hello.
swing by.
Right.
Yeah, between that and Google, and find out where you live, I could.
Yeah, it was not hard, yeah.
Right, within 3 hours, like, you knew who you were, where you lived.
It is scary.
So are we, when, were we trying to establish who found out when, at what?
So we found out from your sister, Ann.
Right.
Because she came up, she popped up.
Yeah, but I was talking about
No, but
your mother.
Oh, our mother,
Yeah.
oh.
That's what we were on the way around finding out.
Lisa.
So
Oh, and I
Lisa-
found out in February. I got a Christmas gift of an ancestry test because I
That's right.
I was going to Europe, curious if I was Swedish. That was it. And I looked at my pie chart and I didn't recognize any of the family members, so I just shut it off. And then Lori emailed me. And she said she was looking for her donor and thought he might be someone in my family. So I spent about 3 days racking my brain, who's Lori's donor.
She's like, maybe it's my uncle.
Yeah, my Uncle John. And you said, is he tall? Because my son's tall. Yeah, he's tall.
I was like, oh, that totally makes sense.
And then I decided to text my cousin on my father's side and said, do you know who this girl's dad could be? And that's when she replied, I was told you came from a sperm donor, but I didn't believe it. But now I think that's the case. So that's how I found out.
You didn't match anybody on your.
No, I did not match anybody on my dad's side. But you know what? I didn't know any of the names, so I just,
Yeah.
whatever, that stuff doesn't count. I don't
How
care
old
about
was
that
your
pie
mother
chart.
when she passed away?
34.
Okay.
Yeah, she had colon cancer.
Your dad died.
My dad died 6 months before I found out about this, so I couldn't even ask him.
Yeah.
And that was
Same
how
with
long
me.
ago was
Yeah,
that?
remember
Huh?
How long ago was that?
My
A year
dad?
ago?
August 1st. He died, yeah, just been a
Yeah.
year.
And my dad died a year ago too. so
Yeah.
I couldn't ask him.
When did he die?
He died May of last year. Like,
My mom died September of last
So
year.
you were right, my mom after me.
My dad
Yeah, my
died
dad raised me because my mom died, so yeah, he was my mom, my dad, everything. And now-
Just think it's the first time she's been able to look
This
at
is the first time I've ever met a
in
parent,
the eyes.
a biological parent. I was so nervous yesterday, I was saying in the car, I don't remember my mom, so this is the first time I've looked at somebody that,
Really?
like a parent, and yeah. No, it's weird.
Wow.
Stare at your fingers, yeah, I was one. I know, sorry, staring.
What did you say?
Oh, she was 1 year old. When
Yeah, I was
my mom-
one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so although I met her, I don't remember.
Right, yeah.
Did you hear that, Pam? Yeah. I thought when you told me, I'd forgotten you were that young.
Yeah, no, I have no memory of her whatsoever.
Oh.
So yeah, this is, to me, was like, I mean, I thought I knew a biological parent until
I know, me too.
February, yeah.
Yeah, well,
I was shocked.
That's funny, you said staring at the fingers, and last night we were all looking.
We
at
all
each
took
other.
our
Oh,
shoes
yeah.
off.
Fingers.
And I told Joel, you're gonna take your shoes off later.
Yeah, we did this yesterday.
Don't
He
worry.
said no.
You'll be fine.
yeah, your third's longer than your first. Yeah.
Oh yeah, ring finger longer than this one.
So Laura and I found out, yeah, like I said, 4 or 5 years ago, so, and at least from my perspective, and I don't know if it's yours as well. Obviously, you know, we're happy with our current family, and I just view this as just a great extension, so it's kind
Yeah,
of like.
same here, yeah.
So refresh me
It's
how
like
you
more
found out.
wonderful. Our mother told us about 5 years ago. She mentioned it. She
told
probably
us
needs some
separately.
coaching.
Yeah.
She needs some coaching.
She
Well, no,
just-
she told me, she tried to tell me 10 years ago, but in a way that I thought, oh shit, I'm the postman's daughter or some illicit affair. That was what I took out of it. So, and it was actually probably 15 years ago. So I actually told her that we would not be having that conversation. And then she brought it, she needs coaching on how to do this.
Yeah, she could use a lesson in tact. And then she told me a few months, a year later, maybe after.
Oh, no, it was
longer
like,
than
no, it was
that.
5 years later.
It was quite a while
It was
later.
quite a while later.
She came out to visit me. She lives in Sedona, and she came out to visit me and was sitting in the living room with me within 30 minutes of landing and just kind of barfed it out. And really, it wasn't even tactful or anything. She just said, well, you know, it just like, you know, we were getting ready to make dinner plans or whatever. So, you know, she just didn't handle it very well. That was it.
And it wasn't random that Lee was the
Yeah.
donor for both of you.
Yeah.
That was
That was
They're all
it. Well,
friends, and I'm
so
saying
my
what a-
mother, so when my mother told us
They're
both
mystified, so I
how
thought
we
it
were
might be-
conceived,
yeah.
to her credit, she said, when I went back to the clinic, I wanted to have another child, I specifically requested the same donor. And this is what I was sharing with Lee, that I am so heartened by the fact that the clinic honored that, because we wouldn't have known any different. I mean, they could have given us any old donor, right? Maybe it wasn't Lee.
Those two are
So-
both,
Right,
Full
yeah, so we're full
Same.
siblings. Same mother, same, well, father sitting right here next to me. So, and they did, so, you know, they did honor that, and that was really one of the main reasons we went in initially, was the health reason, but also to just see if we matched as full siblings, which we do.
I'm glad, but now you have to share her.
I know. Well, she has to share me, too.
Right, when Laura talks to me, she says, my sister Cammy, and I remind her, our sister Cammy. Right?
I know, I keep referring to her as my sister. This is the one I grew up with.
Right.
I know, I said that, my brother.
I do love
this
that.
thing, yeah.
I am still telling though my niece though, I'm like, you got one favorite auntie.
Right,
Meet these other people, but
Whatever.
yeah, you're on the pecking order here.
I'm sure that won't change.
Yes, competition.
Yeah.
When did you find
I found it at 52 years old. Yeah, my parents had both deceased, and my stepfather was not doing well and decided to tell my brother at that point. So my brother and I are only half siblings. We thought our whole lives we were, again, we had no
You're right.
Wow.
no clue. And so he's the one actually in January that had texted me or called me and said, Laura, you should get on Ancestry. You probably have some matches, because I have some matches. And I'm like, oh, okay, because I rarely went on there. My brother was super high-centered on finding everything out, and I was just like, yeah, whatever. Have a good life. Things are good, whatever. And it's so funny how then I end up finding out everything, and he still doesn't know anything out, how crazy it is. So that's, I got on Ancestry, and I messaged Lisa, and I was like, hey, here's my story, kind of weird. Don't know if you know one of your family members I could be. And that's when,
Uncle John, Uncle John.
that whole thing went down.
Is your brother a donor child as well?
He is, yeah,
From
he
the
is.
same clinic?
From the same clinic.
So raise your hand here, who has siblings
And
that
what
are
year
also
was
a
that?
donor? You do.
So
Lori?
that I found out?
No, what year? What year
I
was
was
she?
born in 63 and my brother was born in
4.
69.
And maybe me, I don't know.
So one of your.
So he doesn't match.
Probably
brother?
not.
No, he doesn't.
Well, it may have been a.
So it could be one of
but-
your
Could be one of
fraternity
your-
brothers.
Yeah, but somebody I didn't know because I had graduated
Well,
in,
my brother was born in 1966, and that's when my mom originally went to the clinic. She said, I asked her later in life, when I found out 6 months ago, I said, Mom, did you have trouble getting pregnant with Greg? She goes, well, yeah, your dad had a low sperm count. I'm like, oh.
Matter of factly.
And then so, but my brother has a different donor. But I think she went to the same clinic. I don't know, but she has dementia, so just.
Yeah, I was.
she probably, I'm gonna guess she went to this, there weren't that many options, I don't think,
That's
yeah.
why I
I mean,
assumed.
there's a possibility that some of these siblings could be
Matched
Siblings,
together.
they could
Of
be
your
seeing
fraternity.
each other, yes.
Yeah, or they could be matched to each other.
Do you have any idea how many donors are worth the time at the clinic?
Well, see, I graduated in '60, so there was a carry-on. There were people, Jim, you never met Jim. Jim Stanley's his name, he's dead, so I can mention his name. But I understood, I found out from one of my friend donors just a couple weeks ago that he started doing it. So there was probably a whole new class of donors that were in the same fraternity, but I had once you graduate, you don't hang around there anymore. So the likelihood is they may have been people that I might have known of secondhand because they were, or they might have been freshmen when I was a senior, so. But the donors I know about, I kind of doubt they were still doing it. I'm gonna do a little investigating. You have nothing to worry about. The donors, the other donors, seriously, we're all really good people, smart, successful. No, I mean, if somebody ends up with
With one of your friends?
with one of my friends there, yeah. I don't know how we would know that, but,
Yeah, but we still got the best, so.
Yes,
We got the best.
Did the clinic ever share, I'm just curious, did they ever share anything with you about, I mean, obviously you were doing this for quite a while, you were very successful, there's quite a few of us here. Did they share any information with you, like, hey, keep it coming, you're doing a good job, I mean, you know?
you might want to rephrase that.
Sounding like your mom now.
Laura.
What my sister meant to say.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah.
What she meant to say was that they tell you how many there were along the way. Successful pregnancies. Yeah.
Yes, there is an answer to that question. I did ask it, and I was told that, well, this is the wrong thing to brag about. Well, maybe not. But I apparently had the highest success rate of the group. I was told that. And the success rate is apparently, as I recall, was around 50%.
Wow.
Oh, there's more of us.
Oh, yeah.
There are more of us.
Just a few.
Okay, who said last night that there was a year that there was only 1,200 sperm?
In 1963.
1963, in the country, right?
I read one statistic that said in 1963 there were 1,200 births from donor conceived.
That's it.
Wow, we've got 7.
Wait a minute, 1,200 donors
In the country.
in the entire country?
In the entire country. That's really very cutting edge
I had-
technology.
If you excuse the expression, I had market
Right
penetration.
now.
Wow.
But it's worth noting that there were 7 of us were in utero simultaneously.
In between 63
And
and 64.
Yeah.
60.
It was,
You.
Oh, here in this grouping.
Yeah.
Not us.
in this
We're
group.
frozen.
Yeah.
Seven of us.
We checked for
Right.
Yeah.
I'm the only 66 then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm the only 69.
Debbie, who's not here, was also,
Right.
her mother was pregnant. 7 of us had mothers pregnant at the same time.
And Joel, what did you say? That was a litter? That was
No, I think
A
Bob
litter?
said that.
Bob said it was a litter.
Somebody in a group text called it a litter. That was
That's
Bob.
awesome.
Yeah.
63, yeah.
So Terry and myself and Bob are all
Everyone raise their
63.
hand is 63.
63, 64.
Or you
Or
64.
And Debbie, if she was here.
Yeah.
Debbie, yeah.
Wow. And Bob, you guys
We
were.
were all, that was a good season.
So that was a
That was a good season.
particularly succhysuccessful round during
Wow.
that time frame.
Good job. Eating healthy.
Hydrated.
Pardon? Yeah, this all took place during my first marriage. So, yeah, there was no, yeah, there was,
okay. Oh, wait, you were married when you were donating?
Yeah, and you had
Yes.
a daughter and
well, it's not like cheating on your wife, is it?
It is not. It is not at all.
Yeah,
and she knew at the time you were
yeah,
going.
oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, we needed the income.
Well, the money was
I
coming
mean,
in.
I was
yeah,
making
right?
$525 a month, and I could make another $125 a month.
Yeah.
And so it made perfect sense.
When did you get married the first time?
1960, right after college.
Right after college.
Yeah, right. I graduated in '60, and we got married shortly thereafter.
What year did you get married your second wife?
1971.
Oh, and you didn't donate, well.
No, no.
And with Pam, you got married?
20 years.
20 years in February,
Awesome, in 1999.
and everybody knows the.
Yeah, I agree.
No, yeah.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Yeah, Pam's an
No.
angel.
Terry,
Yeah.
did you share that you met
doctor?
Yeah, I did mention it, I did meet the doctor, and I went in because I was worried that I couldn't conceive, because my mother had said when I was young that she had a hard time conceiving. So I made an appointment, and I walked in and said, you helped my mom conceive, you know, can you check me out? And he paled.
Is this Gero?
Dr. Crow, yeah.
Oh, my God. I'll bet he did.
So they said,
Oh.
he's like, honey, come back when you're
Actually can't get
married
pregnant.
and, you know, because I was in my 20s at the time. And so the story actually gets better. So because I went to his office, I knew where his office was located. So it's 12301 Wilshire Boulevard. Shoot forward maybe 15 years, I'm running this environmental consulting firm and we're moving. And the office manager was choosing locations and brought me out to 3 of those 3 to choose the location. And one of them was Dr.
my
Crow's
God.
office.
Wow.
And I said, we're taking that one.
Oh, yeah.
Shoot forward another 10 or 15 years, I want to get pregnant. So we sent the sperm that inseminated Kim, that gave us Paloma, to the office. And we just tried to do it ourselves in the office. And I thought, well, wouldn't that be kind of cool?
Caveman style.
Well, wait a
It
minute.
didn't work.
The professional wants
Wait a
to
minute.
give advice.
Yeah.
You were helping inseminate Kim?
She inseminated
You,
me.
oh, and so you were the doctor.
Yeah. But she wasn't as successful as Dr. Crow.
Right, I see.
Did it work?
No. No, it didn't work.
Dr. Perot.
Did you use a turkey baster or?
Because you don't need much, right? 0.5 cc,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he never gave any kind of a verbal reaction to you saying you.
He just was highly uncomfortable. I could tell he was uncomfortable.
Why was he uncomfortable?
I don't know if I might have been the first live baby that.
To come
Because you gave your
walking
mom
into his
The
office.
confidentiality thing.
Confidentiality.
Out about
Yeah,
that.
Right.
I thought you didn't know you were pregnant.
I didn't know that.
You just thought,
I thought it was
amazing.
my dad's stuff, and I don't know what he did with my dad's stuff that wasn't working, but he did some kind of magic. and-
Right.
They told all our moms that they blended the
Yeah.
donor and
Oh,
the
yeah,
father
that's what my mom said.
to make it
So
feel
that you
like
never
smoke and
knew.
mirrors kind of
Yeah,
thing, to make
right.
it, you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They never did that.
So that there could be this possibility
Yeah.
that it's, well, even though it didn't work for 15 years, that maybe this
Yeah.
one time we mixed it with somebody else's.
We'll give it a boost.
That's what my mom
Yeah.
said, but I think she was trying to say that because she didn't want me to think my dad wasn't my dad.
Yeah, I think
There was
that's-
a lot of psychology going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Like,
It was
hey, he's
new
a
enough.
medical student, hey, we mixed it, hey,
mixed
you
it,
know.
yeah.
It
It was new enough.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But
You said, oh, I'm sorry, you said that one of the reasons you wanted to do this was for anyone who might come next.
Yeah.
And so I just wonder why, while we're all here, if you'd like to say what you'd like to happen.
Well,
Just going forward.
yeah, and
Right.
that's,
Good question, Bob. Yeah.
that's the right question. You know, this is so wonderful that my inclination is say, oh, what the hell, let's just keep it going. At some point in time, I don't know if that's manageable as far as I'm concerned. And I haven't completely thought it through. It's totally manageable where it is now in terms of, and I would love to join whenever you guys have a get-together. I want to know that. I've talked to each of you individually about some of the limitations I have when I'm in Southern California with my 4 kids and 9 grandchildren, and I bounce around trying to see them all when I visit from San Luis Obispo. And, oh, by the way, my daughter Keisha sent me a really loving little email this morning saying that she knew this was an emotional day and she wants me to know that she loves me. And so everything's cool with Keisha. Tracy is going to take a little more time, but she'll come around. So I guess my first pass at this is if somebody pops up and approaches me, I don't really know how to administer that. I mean, should I delegate it, direct it to one of you?
I'll just swing by the place. And
Yeah.
I'll
Brett's the one that visited.
Well, how's the delivery? Do you like his delivery with that?
Yeah, no.
Like when we're in Boston, we'll just drive over to their house and all.
Right.
So
actually a good
maybe
point.
my first pass at this is not completely well thought through, but would be to have them get in touch with you. You can offer them the video as a way of saying, here we are. It includes all of you. Here he is. He is going to come to all of the get-togethers that I can reasonably make. And I will do that, and I would love to do that. I don't know. I mean, if the group goes to 20, I can handle 20.
Yeah, what's your breaking point?
I'd say right now.
It's gonna be the first quarter every year, right after the holiday.
Right, exactly, right after this. Right after
Right.
23 and me.
The Christmas rush.
On Amazon.
February, March.
Mother's Day and Father's Day.
Well, we may need new rules after 20, but for the time being, I think if I get a call, if you don't mind, Brett, I'm just
Yeah. just
picking
run
you.
interference and-
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll tell them to get in touch with you, that we do have a video that shows us all together and explains in quite good detail.
I
Which is
really
way
thought
more
they
than
wouldn't
any of us
reach out
ever
to you
expected.
because they wouldn't know you were right.
Right.
One of us.
Right.
Because they matched us.
right.
Right.
But I mean,
Right.
this is way more, just this video, if any of us would have had
Oh, this would have been
access to that,
amazing.
this would have been,
I'm jealous for
They would have
future.
closed so many.
Yeah.
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 So I mean,
Yeah.
just to get a link with this video would.
How often do you guys anticipate getting together as a
Once a
group?
year, maybe? And that's another thing. I thought we should pick a date while we're together.
We
When everyone's
right.
schedules
Every
are
6
clear.
months?
We need to make this an annual thing formally.
Definitely
For
annual.
sure,
This
annual.
like an annual.
Yes.
Maybe you should do it closer to San Luis Obispo.
Yeah,
That would be
We talked about
Well,
this.
that's really not necessary. It really isn't, but.
Well,
I
it's
mean,
not
but-
110 degrees up there. So
Yeah,
like,
but,
for
yeah,
San-
yeah, but if you,
We're in
Would
the
you
house
prefer
across
that
the
we
street.
didn't?
Yeah.
that's fine.
Would you prefer that we
Next
weren't
door.
in San Luis?
No. No.
Okay.
No.
You're okay if we do the next one?
Absolutely.
Up there?
We thought about looking for a big house up there. And
Right.
Actually, there are, some of the wineries up in the Edna Valley have some big houses that they are now Airbnb-ing on the vineyards.
Oh, that would be.
So you could get a couple houses and,
Perfect.
What?
She looked at it for a wedding venue. It's called Green Gate in San Luis Obisco.
Oh, there we go.
Or we just stay with Noah.
not to skip around.
We just stay with Noah.
Awesome.
Can we stay in your fraternity house? That would bring it full circle.
Do all the grandchildren, everybody knows who the grandchildren are?
No,
Oh,
bring
should
them
we have
out.
We need to do a grandchildren.
introduction of those?
Honey, go get them.
Let's bring the grandkids in.
Okay, grandkids.
Yeah, sit on mom's lap. Here, you can sit on Come here, Bryce, right here, honey. All right, there's my boy.
There we go. We got,
Okay, I was just kidding.
Too bad.
Oh, God. There you go. You're skinny, but you're still heavy.
You gotta feed your head around.
Oh. Sit on your grandpa's lap. Oh, how
No, she's doing
Just
what
by
she
answering the
Yes,
phone
yes,
call.
yeah.
My daughter was here.
Should we have the grandkids say their names?
Oh, Mark, you should get Madison on FaceTime. No, I'm serious.
I'm missing
Get-
my 15-year-old's that.
Get the iPad.
What time is it in Argentina?
5:20, and she's been messaging me. I just looked. She's probably dying. What's going on?
Thanks, guys. Thanks. The grandkids are gorgeous.
So you guys go around and say your name. Oh, yeah. How about that?
Melissa.
Allison.
Bryce.
Morgan.
Next one.
Shelby.
Noah.
Taylor.
Is that everybody?
Nope.
Say
Peyton.
Got the little mini Taylor.
And then the missing ones are
Yes.
Ashley, 15.
Paloma, 14.
Madison's calling in a minute. We'll have her.
And Samantha, 13.
Okay.
Andrew, 18.
Cool.
Well, how do the grandkids feel?
That's not
about
yours,
all of
Kevin,
this?
is it?
No.
I'm just, don't do this to me.
Mark, do you want to use my WhatsApp? On WhatsApp?
That was a good question,
Yeah,
Maria.
how do the grandkids feel about?
I think it's awesome.
I agree.
Yeah, really unique experience, yeah, for sure.
And we have the.
All right, here's your other cousin.
Madison.
Introduce yourself.
She's beautiful.
She's in Argentina right now.
Age, your height, you know, any valid
Everything.
information, yeah.
Tell us.
Your basic file.
Can you hear us?
That's wonderful.
She's really outgoing, you can't tell.
She's not talking to say hi.
Introduce yourself, Madison.
We feel the same.
I live in Argentina right now, in Buenos Aires. I've been here for about 3 months. And I'll be here for a couple years.
What?
Yeah.
When I come back for Christmas.
Yes.
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 All right, you
By the
can
way, I was thinking about making sure you come up.
Yes,
You're
we
coming, okay.
I talked to
because we're
Pam,
gonna
we're
plan-
gonna
yeah,
give you
yeah.
the date, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
That Saturday.
Yeah, all of this from answering one phone call at her fraternity, so.
You
And
better
I-
start Christmas shopping like soon.
Yeah, that's right.
Send your Amazon link of what you like for
Right.
Christmas.
Ever send that through Pam?
Lisa thinks I'd start thinking about Christmas presents.
Oh, yeah. Send your link.
I was trying to cut my Christmas list like by
Yeah.
half.
There's a lot of years.
Now